So this webinar is hosted by EAHCISS. EAHCISS is the European Association for Holders of Commonwealth Independent State Securities, and it's jointly hosted with electis.ru, which is a Moscow-based law firm by Irina Siberina, and we'll go into that later. Apologies for the slight delay in starting this webinar because of the technical difficulties, but it is working right now. So again, my name is Kay. I'll just refer to myself as Kay during this webinar. I'm a member of the board of EAHCISS as well, and EAHCISS again is an association for investors in the Commonwealth Independent States. And with us today is Irina Siberina, and she is a Moscow-based lawyer with electis.ru, and she has helped many investors with procedures necessary to protect their investments, such as forced conversion in the past of depository receipts, and she's also been active in claiming missed dividends for investors that did not receive their normal dividends through their Western broker. For example, in dividends of Sberbank, you could then claim them through the Russian depository directly. Irina, can you introduce yourself a bit further? You can unmute yourself, maybe. Otherwise, we'll just continue and just work on it, Irina, and we'll get to you once you manage to unmute yourself. Irina is saying that the connection is a bit slow on her side, but we'll try and work that through. We're very happy to have you here with us. Okay, some of the topics that we'll discuss this morning or afternoon, depending on from where you're joining in the world today, is the background of EAHCISS, some key points concerning the distribution of Evraz NTMK shares, some legal challenges that have been facing Evraz Plc. We'll go into the relevant legislation for the share distribution. We'll go into how you can actually then receive those NTMK shares, the paperwork that is required, as well as we'll go into the process, both for those with share certificates and those who hold their position through a Western broker. And we'll also discuss on how you can get help going through the process. And lastly, we'll go into some sanctions concerns that some of you may have, and then we'll finish off with a round of questions. So some of background regarding EAHCISS. EAHCISS is, again, the European Association for Holders of Commonwealth Independent State Securities. It's been founded by investors that came together through the Discord channel. Some of you may also be in this Discord channel, so you will be familiar with us. It's basically a club of like-minded investors. We're registered in Amsterdam, and we're an association in the Dutch law. Investors can become a member of the club, and the membership fee is currently €30 a year. And we still are looking for people that want to be active in the club. So there's vacancies for commissions, or if people want to be part of the board, that's fine as well. So if you're interested, please let us know and contact us. So some of our activities are representing the interests of investors in the Commonwealth. So that means that we have contact with regulators, with legislators, other relevant stakeholders. We are in contact with the European Commission. We are in contact with Russian embassies in Europe, with politicians, and so on. We've also given press interviews in the past. We aim to exchange and spread knowledge between members of the club, and that is also what we try to do in this webinar. And we use club funds to also collectively hire experts or fund subscriptions to relevant resources. So we have a subscription to Resborka, and Resborka that is a paid Russian blog where they analyze Russian securities, and then we try and translate those those articles into English for you to read and access. And we're actually looking into undertaking collective legal action against brokers that did not facilitate, for example, the conversion of depository receipts and thereby harmed investors financially. But this is quite tough to sort of gain enough funding to start collective proceedings. But it's something that we're working on. Then some key points regarding Evraz NTMK. So in general, Western investors can apply for the distribution of Evraz NTMK shares if they have bought Evraz Plc shares, so the shares of the British company, before August 5th, 2022. And they should have held that position until at least July 22nd, 2025. The procedure is much easier for those investors that got issued share certificates before the 5th of August 2022, but also those investors that held through a broker after the 5th of August 2022 would generally be able to get those shares, but would need help from probably a Russian notary to help collect evidence of holding those Evraz Plc shares on the relevant dates. From a period from at least August 4th, 2022 to at least July 22nd, 2025. And EAHCISS will and can refer investors to Russian professionals that we have good experiences with to aid in the process. Okay, then some legal challenges that is facing Evraz Plc. Evraz Plc lost a court case in Russia against its subsidiary Evraz KGOK and was ordered to pay about $2.2 billion to Evraz KGOK. And it is good to know that Evraz KGOK is a subsidiary of Evraz NTMK. So when you get your shares distributed in Evraz NTMK, Evraz KGOK will be part of that NTMK group. Evraz NTMK has been classified as an economically significant organization under Russian law. And this is relevant because under that law, then the Russian Ministry of Industry and Trade can start a legal case to suspend the share ownership of the British holding, in this case Evraz Plc, in its subsidiary Evraz NTMK. And we put in links to the case materials. It's also good to know that we will publish this presentation shortly after the webinar for you to fall back on. The Moscow court then granted the request from the Russian ministry, and the result is that shareholders of Evraz Plc can now apply to get shares in Evraz NTMK. And if you do not participate in the share distribution, you should be aware that there may not be many assets left in Evraz Plc after this ordeal is over. And it's also good to realize that Evraz Plc sold its Northern American assets for, in my opinion, a significant discount. So, we'll have to see what is left in Evraz Plc after this is over. And it's also good for you to know that once you opt to get shares in Evraz NTMK, you will still remain a shareholder of Evraz Plc. So you will both have your shares in Evraz Plc, and you will then additionally have your shares in Evraz NTMK. Okay, so what is the relevant legislation for the process? I won't go into all the details, but it's important for you to know that the ASO procedure is based on Russian Federal Law number 470FZ. So you can look that up if you want more information about the actual process. And in the federal law, it will state that you would have, I think it's 3 months to then apply for the Evraz NTMK shares after the regulations on how to apply have been published. So in this case, Evraz NTMK published its regulations on the process last month in August, and so then 3 months following August 2025 would be September, October, November. So you have until the 24th of November 2025 to make sure that the original documents are with Rust, which is the registrar for Evraz NTMK, to then process your application. And then it's also very important for you to know that the presidential decree number 520 states that from the day of entering of that decree, which was the 5th of August 2022, you would need, as a foreign as a foreigner, so not a Russian permanent resident, you would need permission from the Russian government to engage in trades or transfers that involve Evraz NTMK. And I think many people interpret the law in such a way that this also means that if you transfer or buy shares in its holding company, which would be Evraz Plc in this case, then the law would apply to that as well. So you would formally need permission from the Russian government to trade shares of Evraz Plc, because that includes in its subsidiary Evraz NTMK. Yeah, and therefore this cutoff date of the 5th of August 2022 exists. And so this cutoff date and this legislation is particularly important if you want to do something with those shares under Russian law. So this procedure of getting the NTMK shares is a procedure in the Russian law. So then, based on Russian law, they will probably say, and which is also stipulated in the regulation, that you need to have those shares before August 5th, 2022, in order to be able to participate in the share distribution. And again, this only applies to foreign nationals, so non-Russian nationals. So if you are a Russian and you bought those shares in Russian infrastructure, then the relevant date is the 22nd of July 2025. But I think for most viewers here, the relevant date will be August 5th, 2022. So imagine you applied for the process and you now want to actually receive those shares. There's basically two options for you. So you can either hold those Evraz NTMK shares through the registrar directly. So then you will be entered as a shareholder on the share register directly, and you can then opt for holding via the registrar Rust. And you can set up an account with Rust, and they will then enter you in the share register directly. There may be some advantages to this. So if you prefer to hold your shares directly via the share register, then an advantage may be that there is no chain of custody. So you're a direct shareholder, and there's no nominee holder in between. But a disadvantage would be that Rust does not facilitate trading on the Moscow Stock Exchange. So once trading would become possible in the future, you're basically sort of stuck in the share register, and you can probably do a transfer in the share register, but it's more complicated and you have to find a buyer yourself. So it's basically like a transfer of Evraz Plc shares right now, where you then have to submit transfer forms to the registrar to then make that transfer happen in the share register. And generally, opening an account with Rust is more difficult than opening an account with, say, Cifra broker, and we'll go to that right now. So your other option is holding through a broker. So if you're holding through, say, Cifra broker, then you would be able to trade through Cifra broker should that be possible again on the Moscow Stock Exchange. And the Cifra broker is quite popular because they have an easy process to set up an account, and it's not been sanctioned by Western countries such as the UK, the US, or the EU. And Cifra broker is still integrated in the Freedom Finance architecture. So this, for example, for me means that I can easily switch between my accounts from Freedom Finance Europe to my Cifra account within the app or within the online infrastructure. And you can open an account with a Western phone number, which is quite helpful as well. So you don't need a Russian phone number. And my experience with Cifra is quite good. So they often reply quite fast to messages that you send in the support environment. But you have to be aware that you need to submit a translation into Russian of your passport and tax document, and that translation would need to be certified by a Russian notary. And we'll go into how you can do this later in the presentation. In the past, many also opted for Gazprom Bank as a popular broker in Russia, but Gazprom Bank is currently sanctioned by the UK and the US, so it may still be an option for EU holders, but it normally won't be an option for UK or US holders. And Raiffeisen Bank Russia may be an option for some as well, but generally the process of opening an account with Raiffeisen Bank Russia is more complicated. So now imagine you set up your account with Cifra. You will need to fill in details to accept those shares on the application forms, and these details are shown here on the right hand slide here on the slide. So this is what you would need to fill in on your application form, which is your details of your agreement with Cifra broker, and also the details of Cifra broker with NSD. And you would need to complete the application form in Cyrillic, so you will probably need help from a Russian translator to complete the forms completely, or from a Russian representative. But it's important that you know those details to fill in. But you can also, again, get those details from Cifra support directly once you've set up your account. Okay, so generally Russians like stamps and they like wet signatures. As a general rule, assume that every document, especially when it's a copy, will need to be notarized, and the notarized copy will need to be apostilled before you can ship it to Russia for translation and submission. So how to get your notarized copy? Well, go to a local notary. For the UK investors here, you can find local notaries through this website, the facultyoffice.org.uk. And you would need to have then that a signature of the notary apostilled, and you can find the authority that issues apostilles in your specific country through the Hague Convention website. And in the UK, the authority to issue an apostille would be the Foreign Office. And you would normally then send the document by mail to the Foreign Office. They will apply an apostille and will send it back, but this can take up to 2 weeks, which, given the time period left from the date of this presentation, is very, very short. So I would strongly recommend you to use a fast-track service. You will pay an additional fee, but they will have a fast-track service to get you that apostille. And you can see the link here that shows you providers of this fast-track service. Okay, so now we'll go into the procedure. Some general points here. The procedure is significantly easier if you have had share certificates in Evraz Plc issued before the 5th of August 2022. The deadline for physical submission of the documents is November 24th, 2025. And Rust strongly prefers to carry out a pre-check before submission, or Evraz actually does that pre-check. And the pre-check is ideally done between 6 to 8 weeks before the deadline, as this allows time to correct documentation or correct any errors that may have been present on the application form. The pre-check is not actually established in legislation, so it's sort of an extra service. And in my opinion, you should still be able to get approval if you did not get your pre-check done 6 weeks in advance. But as long as you get the documents delivered to Rust in time and the application is complete, then you should be able to participate in the process. But again, it may be beneficial to get pre-approval, and then you're sort of more certain that the documents that you will submit will be approved. And it's quite important to really read all the documentation that Evraz NTMK provided, and the documents can be found on Evraz NTMK website, which is www.evraz.ru. So the PLC website is evraz.com, and the NTMK website is evraz.ru. And then the email address for the pre-check is displayed on this slide as well, and he can also see the address for final submission of the documents. Okay, so what does the procedure look like for those that have share certificates issued before the 5th of August 2022? Again, this procedure is significantly easier if you are one of those lucky ones that had their share certificate issued in time, so before the 5th of August 2022. So what you would need in terms of documentation is a notarized and apostilled copy of your passport. You would need a copy of your share certificate, and you would need a completed and signed application form, completed and signed personal data agreement form for Evraz NTMK, and the completed and signed personal data agreement form for the registrar Rust. And then we'll go into the details of the actual procedure. So generally, I would recommend you to get a notarized copy made of your passport first, and then get this copy apostilled. In the meantime, you can send a simple scan of your passport and text document to your Russian translator and ask the Russian translator to translate those documents, have the translation certified by a Russian notary, and then scanned for you. And then you can use that scan to open an account with Cifra. Cifra may ask for the original documents that the translator can then send to Cifra's office. And then once you have set up your Cifra account using the link provided in this slide, you can now get your account details and the inbound transfer details from Cifra broker. So you can now get the information that you need to put on the application form so that Rust knows where to deliver those NTMK shares. And in the meantime, hopefully your translator can help you filling in the application forms and filling in the personal data forms as well. Again, all those forms can be found on the Evraz website, and it's quite recommendable to complete the forms in Cyrillic scripture. So have your translator help you with that. Once all the application forms have been signed by you as the applicant and as the investor, you can now ship all the documents along with the notarized and apostilled copy of your passport to your translator in Russia. And the translator in Russia will now translate your passport again, or she probably has your old translation, which you can now get a certified translation of your passport affixed to your notarized and apostilled copy of your passport, and she can now check whether the application is complete, and she can then make scans of all the documents, and then you can send the documents to Evraz for pre-approval. And once you've gotten approval from Evraz, you can now ask your translator to express ship all the documents to Rust for the application. Yeah, sorry, it says Evraz here in the slide, but you have to send them to Rust, and the address is stated here for formal submission. Just make sure that the documents arrive at Rust before the deadline of the 24th of November 2025. Okay, so you probably need some help with this process. We've found a translator that will be able to help you. She is Elena. I met Elena myself when I was visiting Kaliningrad in December 2022. And she helped me around, and I found her to be a very trustworthy person, so I would highly recommend her to any of you. She also made a package deal for investors to help you with the process. So this includes the translations required, making scans, helping to get your documents from Europe to Kaliningrad. So she knows people that regularly travel from Germany to Kaliningrad, but you can also find people yourself that regularly travel from Germany or from another EU country to Kaliningrad. And there's a Telegram group that often posts people traveling, and they will often offer to take parcels or letters with them for a small fee. You can also use Royal Mail to send documents to Russia, but it's not to be recommended, because my experience from the Netherlands with or national mail carrier, and I think the same applies to Royal Mail from the UK, is that it will take about 5 weeks for documents to arrive in Russia. So you simply do not have the time to rely on a universal postal service. Yeah, and she will then help you complete the application forms, send the documents to Moscow by express mail, and she will engage with you during the process. The package costs €300, and it's payable to an EU bank account. So this is quite an advantage with working with Elena. She has access to an EU bank account, so you can simply pay her in that account. And she charges 50% in advance, and the remaining 50% has to be in the account before the documents are being shipped off to Moscow for final submission. Yeah, and Elena, she studied German and English in Russian university, but her German is a bit better than her English, but she translates from both German and English into Russian. So she will be absolutely be able to help you guys. And her details are shown in the slide. Okay, so what does the process look like if you're stuck in the broker with your Evraz Plc shares, or when your share certificates were unfortunately issued after the 5th of August 2022? Well, then unfortunately the procedure is significantly more complicated, because you have to prove ownership in your brokerage account before the 5th of August, all the way through to, well, at least July 2022. So what you would normally need for this process is a notarized and apostilled copy of your passport, a notarized and apostilled power of attorney for your Russian representative that will help you with the process. You would need the completed and signed applications forms, although you can also ask a representative to sign the forms on your behalf. And you would need printouts of all the websites of the entities in the chain of custody, and a printout of the website of the licensing authority for that specific financial entity. And in the end, you would need to submit evidence of holding. Unfortunately, many Western brokers won't provide the level of evidence that is required for these processes. So the most common form of getting evidence is asking a Russian notary to log into your Western brokerage account. And then the Russian notary will make screenshots. He will describe all the steps that he has taken in the report. And then the report, along with all the screenshots as attachments, will serve as evidence of you holding those shares on specific dates. So the Russian notary will usually generate activity reports that will then show that you bought the shares before the 5th of August 2022, and that you remain the shareholder of those shares until at least July 22nd, 2025. And for those holding certificates, you may have to do both. So you may have to prove ownership through a broker from before August 5th, 2022, up to the moment that the certificate was issued, and you will provide a copy of your certificate as well to prove then contains ownership through a certificate. And again, the certificate needs to be translated into Russian with the translation being certified by a Russian notary. What I forgot to say is that the copy of your certificate does not need to be notarized, so you can just make a simple copy of your certificate, but all the copies of, say, your passport or your tax document would normally have to be notarized and apostilled. Yeah, and once that report is finished, especially when the report is made from a UK brokerage account, many UK brokers won't be able to display the report in Russian. So some brokers will be able to. So if you are with Interactive Brokers, for example, you're one of the more lucky ones, because Interactive Brokers, you can set the language settings to Russian, and so that will save you translation costs at the end. But for many other brokerage firms, you don't have the option to select the Russian language, and then the attachments of the brokerage report will have to be translated into Russian as well. So again, let's go over the steps quickly. If you hold your shares through a brokerage firm, you would normally need to send a copy of your passport and a document confirming tax identification number by email to your Russian representative, and that Russian representative will then get this translated for you, with the translation being certified by a Russian notary. You will then receive a scan of those documents, and you can now open an account with Cifra broker, and they may ask for the original documents to be sent to their office. Again, once you have your details in Cifra broker, you can now ask Cifra broker to get your account details and inbound transfer details. And now you can get your notarized copy made of your passport, get the notarized copy apostilled, and when you're in the UK, I would strongly recommend you going for a physical apostle, so don't go for the e-apostle, because the e-apostle is less known abroad, so there's a chance that they will not recognize it as well, and will, you just don't want to risk that they will reject your application because you picked an e-apostle instead of a physical apostle. So I just would be on the safe side here and go for a physical apostle. You would need to get a power of attorney for your representative in Russia. So how to do this is you would normally go to a local notary in your country. You can also go to the notary with the Russian consulate, but I think many people normally go to a local notary, and then your signature on the power of attorney will be verified and certified by that notary. Again, you would then need to have that document apostilled, and you can then ship that document to Russia. And then the document will be translated into Russian, and now your Russian representative has a power of attorney that the representative can use to go to a Russian notary to have the inspection of your Western brokerage account done. Yeah, and your representative will help you either complete the application forms or will complete those forms on your behalf if your power of attorney allows for them to complete this on your behalf. Again, once you have all the evidence and all the other forms ready, you can now apply for pre-approval through Evraz. And once you will have gained pre-approval, you can submit all the documents, and usually your representative in Moscow will then submit the documents in person, which is quite an advantage because then you don't have to rely on a courier service or a mail service, and your representative will actually submit all those documents in person to Rust. Okay, so Irina has been helping many investors in the past with those processes, and she set up a package deal as well. But unfortunately, Irina has been quite occupied with tasks for other investors. So her capacity is a bit low, especially because her firm is quite small. So she may refer you to a bigger law firm, which is Magenta Legal, that she often refers clients to if she doesn't have the capacity to take on the client herself. Magenta is also experienced with these processes, and I think there's another Russian lawyer in the chat as well that may be able to help investors as well. But I'm sure that Eric may be saying something about this later on during the questions. Why I personally often work with Irina is also because I like working with a single lawyer one-to-one, and her fees are usually a bit lower than the fees from the bigger firms. But yeah, Magenta is a good firm as well, and there's other firms that will be able to help investors too. Then there may be some sanctions to be aware of, especially when you're in the UK. So Evraz Plc has been sanctioned in the UK. And then because Evraz Plc was the holding of Evraz NTMK, that would normally mean that Evraz NTMK is sanctioned as well. But to my understanding, Evraz NTMK has not been sanctioned as an individual entity in the UK, but would then be considered sanctions because it's a subsidiary of Evraz Plc. And under Regulation 11 of the Russia Sanctions Regulations 2019, you as a British citizen or a British national must not deal with funds or economic resources owned, held, or controlled by a designated person. And a designated person is, in this case, would be Evraz Plc. But one could argue that right now, because of the Russian court case, all the shares of Evraz Plc in Evraz NTMK are not owned or controlled by Evraz Plc anymore, because basically because of the court decision under Russian law, all those shares have been transferred from Evraz Plc to the treasury account of Evraz NTMK itself. So one could argue that UK sanctions do not really apply anymore because the holding company doesn't really hold Evraz NTMK anymore. But just be aware that the British authorities may view this differently. So we will probably ask OFSI, the Office of Foreign Sanctions in the UK, to add this specific case to the FAQs. And if you want to be sure, you may also want to consider applying for a specific license from OFSI. Then Rust. So Rust is the registrar for Evraz NTMK. Rust is currently sanctioned by the US and the UK, but not sanctioned by the European Union. And again, if you consider using Gazprom Bank, just be aware that Gazprom Bank has been sanctioned by the US and the UK. And then we have the NSD. So NSD is the Russian equivalent of Euroclear or Clearstream in Europe, or Crest in the UK. So NSD is the Central Securities Depository in the Russian Federation. And NSD has been sanctioned by the US, the UK, and the EU. So you probably do not want those Evraz NTMK shares to be flowing through NSD. And what happened right now is, this is something that we checked with Rust, because of the Russian court case, all the NTMK shares are currently in the treasury account in the registrar with Rust. So these NTMK shares are currently not within NSD, but they are simply booked in the share register in name of NTMK itself. So basically in the treasury account of Evraz NTMK. What happened is that many brokers now also have accounts with the registrar directly. So not just accounts via NSD, but many brokers in Russia will have accounts with the various registrars directly, and Cifra will have an account with Rust as well. And what we're trying to work out in this case is whether Rust can directly transfer those NTMK shares from the treasury account in the registrar to Cifra's account in the registrar, which would prevent those shares flowing through or being made available to NSD as a sanctioned entity. So this is something you just need to be aware of as a non-Russian person, because if you're from Russia, then this is not something that that you have to be concerned about. And then we'll go to the Q&A session.
Hey, just for everyone watching, currently only Mr. K and myself are in the contributor section. And if you have any questions, just click on the little hand icon in the center bottom near the leave call button. If you click on that, I can put you on the podium, so to speak, and you'll be able to ask your questions. Also, given that Irina unfortunately had connection issues, maybe some of you already seen this in chat, but she asked for people with questions directly for her to simply send them to her email address. So you see it on the screen right now, info@idlectus.ru, and she will get back to you.
Yes, and I can see that we have Eric Rath present as well, and if I'm correct, he is also a Russian lawyer that may be willing to answer some of the questions. I'm sorry, Eric, that I'm putting you on the podium right now, but I figure you may be interested in answering some of the questions. But Thelt, welcome. Your microphone is turned off. Not sure if I have to unmute you or you can unmute yourself. We had some people wanting to ask questions. So I can't unmute someone, but maybe.
Hi there.
Maybe you can do. Okay, AM, yes, welcome.
Hi, yes. It was a very quick question, just more of a recap, that if I hold a share certificate and my shares are currently in a Hargreaves Lansdowne SIP, then my understanding is that as long as I do a website fixation in Russia, and get all of that done and all the relevant documents apostilled or notarized, etc., then that is acceptable. Firstly, that's just need confirmation on that, and then secondly, for the what's the only part that I'm actually having done under a POA? Does the POA need submitting as well? Because for the rest of the documents, I'm considering flying out to Russia myself and signing them in front of the notary there, so they won't need anything else. So the question, I guess, is the route that I've specified correct? And then secondly, will I need to also send the POA for the website fixation?
Yes, so most Russian notaries that do website fixations, and just be aware that there is only a few notaries that have good experience with this. We can send you some contact details of notaries that have experience with this. But those notaries that have experience with this usually require someone to be present with them physically in the room, and that person being physically present with them can be your representative, but they will then ask for a POA that allows your representative to do this. So this is what most commonly is the case, but it depends on the notary.
I guess the question is, would that POA then still need to go into my documents as well?
No, so you would need a POA to be present in your documents if someone is physically submitting the application for you in the office of Rust. So then Rust will ask for a POA that allows that representative to submit the documents on your behalf. But if you're flying to Russia yourself and you want to submit the documents yourself, then you won't need a POA for the submission.
Okay, so I understand what you're saying. Just a bit more detail. I've managed to get a POA to a Russian notary who can do website fixations, and they've actually completed the website fixation for me based on the POA. So that was the question, I guess, is that I've now got the website fixation all done, and they've given me the POA as well. So it was only whether I should submit the POA alongside the fixation to Evraz, or do I not need to submit the POA?
You would normally not need to submit the POA.
Perfect.
But if you want to be absolutely sure, then I would recommend you contacting Rust. So you can contact Rust at ntmk@rrust.ru. So their email address is also in their regulation. But normally you would not have to submit the POA.
Brilliant. And the SIP process that I mentioned with not having a share certificate, that's all valid, is it? That as long as I get a website fixation done, get all of my documents that need notarizing notarized, and do all the signatures, that's still acceptable as a proof of continued ownership?
Yes, that should be acceptable. And just be aware, because it's a SIP, there are some tax advantages. So I'm not completely certain how you have to maybe disclose the share distribution to the UK taxman, but that is something that you may or may not want to look into. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've been advised that because the SIP won't mature until I'm at least, well, currently 55, but by the time I get there, they'll probably haul it up to 60. I don't need to declare anything at the point until the point I'm actually taking anything.
Yeah, but then the discussion may be that the share distribution of the NTMK shares follows from your Evraz Plc shares in the SIP, and whether that is then sort of a distribution that goes out of your SIP account. But these are all, this is sort of uncharted territory, I would say. So I wouldn't, I think your approach is fair and reasonable, so to say.
Thank you.
Yeah, Anthony.
Hi, Kay.
Oh, sorry. We'll go to Salt first.
Sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Hi, so my question is about opening an account with Cifra, which requires a tax ID. Can you please maybe elaborate on what this document is? Because I do not have a tax identification document that I'm aware of.
I've lived in the UK, but I'm not a UK citizen myself. But I think for most UK persons, your social insurance number would also be a tax identification number. But please correct me if I'm wrong.
So if you are self-employed, you can request a unique tax reference number from HMRC. But for those of us who are not self-employed, we would not necessarily have a tax identification document. The national insurance number is not related to taxation. It's more to do about social security and things like this.
AM, do you want to?
Yeah, so from what I understand, Cifra will accept a new UTR, the screenshot of the UTR. So even if you're self-employed, you register for a new UTR number. When you log into your online record, the UTR is there. And if you do a screenshot of that or print it down for them, Cifra seem to be accepting the UTR number at the moment, because with our national insurance numbers, we only have a card. And currently HMRC won't issue you with a letter for it.
Okay, thank you. So let me just elaborate on this question a little bit more, and without getting myself into any funny conversation. What if you are a national of a friendly country that does not issue you with a tax identification document rather than the UK? So I'm not talking about the UK. Understand the process. Thank you.
So I'll
Take a
give you an
picture of the
example
UTR.
of Pakistan. If you're a Pakistan national, then you'll need to go to, yeah, because even in Pakistan, you will need to get a tax identity number. Every country has some form of taxation, and therefore, whichever country you belong to, my understanding is that you'll need a tax ID, either in the form of a letter from them or a certificate that they can issue.
How do you do that in Pakistan? Because you hit the nail on the head.
You physically, it's quite easy. So in Pakistan, you just go to the tax office. It costs about 2,000 rupees. You get them to create you a tax ID, but you don't actually become an official taxpayer. They just print you a certificate off and put it online for you. It can be done in most offices in Pakistan pretty much within the hour.
Okay, thank you. Mehrabani bhai.
Anthony.
That's it. Thank you, Kay.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Anthony, and I'm a UK person, and I'm just concerned with whether applying for these shares and a Cifra account would violate any UK sanctions. So I'm just wondering, because you mentioned something about Evraz NTMK not being part of Evraz Plc anymore, right? So does that mean that the UK sanctions don't cover NTMK?
Well, this. I think
no, it's a legal opinion.
Yeah, you could probably look at this issue from different perspectives. So I think you could argue that this would be okay within the UK sanctions framework, but there may be others that argue that because of the Russian court case, this is sort of sanction evasion. So you could also argue from that perspective. So if you have any sanctions questions, I would probably recommend talking to a UK sanctions lawyer, and Morgan Lewis is quite renowned for their Russian dealings as well, so they can probably advise you on this specific topic. If you go on the Morgan Lewis website, that they will have some lawyers that are specialized in dealing with Russia.
Okay, thank you.
AM, your hand is still up. Not sure if you have another
Oh,
question.
apologies. I need to switch that off. Sorry.
I'm just wondering if there's any more hands. Are there any other questions here?
Just as an aside, for people who would like to ask a question, but would rather not come onto the podium with their microphone, just raise your hand. I can make you a contributor, and then you can just ask your answer in chat. So that is also an option.
Jim. So I think Jim should now be added here. Jim, you can now unmute yourself. Jim, go ahead. You're still muted, but you should be able to unmute yourself and then ask a question.
Turn on the mic. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I haven't got a question really. It's just an observation. And I think with the time constraints that we're under, and without having any sort of legal recourse, for the average guy in the street, it just seems far, far too complicated. And you can try your hardest and submit all the documentation just to fall at the last hurdle because you haven't dotted an I or crossed a T, and then you've missed the deadline date. Unfortunately, my shares, I bought the majority of my shares long before August 5th, 2022. But in the months or years that followed that, I managed to get another few thousand shares via over-the-counter trade. So my actual share certificate that I've got from Evraz Plc, the date on that share certificate will be after August 5th, 2022. So I'm just wondering whether, so that puts me in the bracket of the hard to do list. And it just seems, for a layman like myself, an awful lot of hard work that I might fail at the last hurdle again. And I don't know who I can call on to help me get out of this.
Well, I can, we can provide you contacts of Russian lawyers that could help you. And yes, I agree. That is quite a difficult decision to make. Are you gonna invest quite a lot of money in the process and try to get those shares, or are you gonna write off the shares? And this is something that, a decision that every investor has to make for themselves on whether they want to pursue this or not, I guess.
I agree. It's a difficult decision.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, in answer to Jim's question, I can maybe help a little bit here, Jim. If you reach out to most website fixation companies in Russia, the majority are really good, and they'll give you a WhatsApp call, and they'll talk in English as well in terms of the comms. A website fixation at the moment is about £1,000 UK money, and they normally will accept a power of attorney to do the fixation as long as you get it notarized and apostilled locally, which is about £1,000. With that website fixation, as long as it's all on your machine, they will be able to document the entire trail of your contract notes with your broker, anything that you've purchased in your emails, and you'll end up with a document that's got about 100 pages on it. But my understanding is that then proves when you had the shares, what date you had the shares, and how many you would actually qualify for in terms of this. So other than the power of attorney and the fixation, I believe the only other two documents, I guess, are your passport and stuff. But with that same power of attorney, generally the person that's doing the website fixation seems to be able to do any kind of notarizations, and they seem to charge about £40 for those notarizations as well. So you're looking at your passport and anything else. So that might help you. I'm at the final stage of just doing my statement signature, but personally I'm flying out to Russia because the visa was only £570 for 6 months. So that might give you some help in terms of what can be done and whether it's worth it based on your shares.
Thank you. So I'm just wondering if there's anyone left that wants to join the discussion. And if not, then I want to thank you all very much for joining us today. I hope you find this webinar useful, and we'll make the slides available through our normal channels. And this webinar has been recorded, and we'll see if we can sort of get the recording uploaded on the YouTube channel as well, for other investors to look back.
Also, as a short note, for people that have not yet joined our Discord, I have put an invite link in the chat. And with that, you can follow us. If there are perhaps more questions that only popped up after this call has ended, you can ask them there. You can follow updates of EAHCISS and chat with other people in sort of the same boat. So we hope to see you there, as well as, of course, in our EAHCISS community. So thank you, Mr. K.
Great. Thank you. Goodbye.